What's up, guys, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the NeoVintage podcast. I'm Jabro, and I'm here with
Steve. Hope everyone's doing well out there.
And for you guys who have never seen the show before, we're just two guys that like to talk over the biggest stories in gaming, but we always like to start with what we've been playing. So, Steve, what you been playing?
Yeah, so two titles, obviously, that have released the same week. Obviously, I have played a little bit of God of War Ragnarok, due to the way it kind of released in the middle of the week. I haven't had the most time with it. I'm still very, very early on, maybe just breaching 2-3 hours. And so my impressions are very just first impressions. Obviously, love the game. I'm still just so taken away on how good it feels to be back in this sort of world with these characters. Game looks gorgeous, obviously, on PS5. On day one, I had some weird issues where the game would crash. Not crash my whole system, just the game. But that's sort of gone away already. So with that first patch that they released. But it's so good. You know, the game just still controls so solid. It just feels so good. It feels like what a sequel should be, sort of an extension on that, even though I'm still doing so much tutorial. You know, it doesn't let me fiddle around with the armors and things like that. But the standout, which I knew this would be the case, but great credit to them, is just these characters are so alive and they're so good. There's times where I'm like, I wish I didn't have to physically play it because I just love seeing the discussions. And obviously I can't spoil anything, but on top of that, I'm not going to spoil anything. But seeing some of these characters' interactions, especially so early on, earlier than I thought we would see some of these characters, just from their design to their voice acting to the motion capturing, they just are so believable, and it's absolutely great to be in there. So I'm really excited to play more of this. Obviously, again, just came out for us. We just got our hands on it. Some next time, maybe beating it, who knows, or at least we'll be way further deeper into, you know, obviously the more of what makes this a sequel in every sense of the way. So the other game I've been playing, obviously we kind of knew this would come in. It's one of my games I was most anticipating. A little divisive out there with this. So Sonic Frontiers. Sonic Frontiers is finally out, and I know you and I have different views on the game.
Yeah.
But that's a game. That's what anything could be. So Sonic Frontiers came out, and this game I've spent a lot of time with. I'm just about 10 hours into the game, so I feel like I can justifiably discuss a lot of it. So I'm going to break it up into parts to get the technical stuff out of the way. A lot of pop-ins. I do feel like the game could have used a little bit more time, especially when it decided to release the day before God of War. I wouldn't have been mad if this game got pushed maybe into that early winter of next year. The game just needed a little bit more polish, technical wise. A lot of pop-ins, especially the way you unlock things, and some stuff comes out of nowhere, like the rails and stuff when you unlock them. And that's fine. That part of I just don't like that every time I come back to that area, like it needs to sort of pop in and load because I forget where I'm running to. Sonic controls pretty well. There is sometimes just sort of floatiness that's been a thing since forever, pretty much, in 3D Sonic games, where he just isn't as tight as I'd like to control him. I'm missing a platform here or there just because, and not because of my fault, just because he slides off, or he's just always running. The momentum's, though this is some of the best momentum I've seen run with controlling Sonic, it's sort of all over the place sometimes, where sometimes I'm perfect and I'm landing everything, and other times he's just missing shots that he should have clearly hit. So that's just on the technical aspect. It runs good. I have not had a problem with it crashing. The load times haven't been long, anything like that. Now, the bulk of the game, so more of that moment-to-moment gameplay. Obviously, it's been akin to Breath of the Wild, open-world games, everything like that. And for me, for the most part, it's actually really hit. It's really interesting, and it's calming, and it's nice to see Sonic in a different aspect. Now, not these new ideas kind of hit. I don't think almost copying and pasting what the kind of that Breath of the Wild feel to throw Sonic in there makes a lot of sense. You have this big open map. The only thing I will give it One big complaint I had for Breath of the Wild is a lot of the map was empty and there was nothing to do. Sonic has maybe too much to do, especially since a lot of these activities aren't fun. So when you do there's the one where you have to just sidestep left and right on a little block to beat the challenge. You get a little collectible. It opens up the menu. The fact that that doesn't engage in any way doesn't make any sense. Why stop the rhythm to make me push L1 and R1 a couple times and that's it? There's no sort of challenge. The other light up puzzles where you have to walk, those I'm okay with. Those felt sort of puzzly. It just does feel like a weird almost Zelda clone. And not even just specifically Breath of the Wild, and Zelda in general. Even some of the chimes and I know a lot of people have been discussing this. Like when you unbeat one of those little challenges, then it sort of GPS pings out and it makes that jingle. I was like, wow, that jingle's pretty familiar. So it's a weird mix, right? So I actually prefer a little bit more of this open world aspect of Sonic, because exploring and doing a lot of these activities when I'm fighting the enemies, I think is really interesting to finally give Sonic some combat moves that isn't just smash square button to keep homing attack constantly. I do like, especially when you unlock the other abilities, the skill tree, getting the Sonic bursts and the Sonic waves and all these other attacks. They're fun. I think it makes sense. I think the enemy design is a little lazy, just the sort of gray and red on every enemy, and that's something I've said since the early trailers. But I do have to knock it for the same issues I kind of knocked Breath of the Wild, where Breath of the Wild took dungeons, chopped it up, and spread it across the map. Sonic took Sonic levels, chopped them up into minute sections, and kind of spread it around the map. And that's fine for what it's trying to do. It just doesn't really make sense, especially since there is no real recollection in-game about these playing off his memories, because these are mostly rehashed levels and cut-up levels and remixed, not even levels, segments of levels from other Sonic games, from Generations, a little bit from Unleashed, a little bit from Forces. They took the levels, remixed them very, very slightly, chopped it up, and put it in there, and that's very clear as day as they did that, because Sonic controls completely different in these cyber levels. He plays a little bit more like Sonic Colors, when he's in these levels compared to when he's in the open map, so it's very jarring in that sense. And I just feel like it would have been better to make a smaller map, with maybe 1 or 2 levels in each world, that were full-fledged levels instead of 1-minute segments, because to get an S rank, most of these segments are like a minute long, and they're just very easy. They're very easy. I'll give it to it. The cyberspace levels music is fantastic. I think the remix of some of these older tracks with new tracks with a sort of techno vibe makes a lot of sense and just sounds really great to listen to. But that also brings me to my other complaint, is this overall cyber effect. And I know I'm about 10 hours, so I'm 10 hours, so I'm like halfway through the game. That theme just doesn't make any sense. There's no reason for the game to be this weird cyber connect level. It's not like he uploads his mind into a VR headset or anything like weird like that. It just doesn't make sense. You crash land and things are missing, and unless that's something revealed later on, it just doesn't make sense. The main antagonist you see is half cyber, and again, they use just black, red, and gray as that color theme, which, though we don't like to talk about Sonic Forces, that main protagonist in Infinite was the same, just black, red, and gray.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like you kind of use this, almost reusing the theme, so just all doesn't jive as well as it does. And it's a really just, all in all, because I could talk about this game forever, all in all, it's a super solid starting point. I see the vision they wanted to do. For most part, I think they nailed a lot of that stuff. I think they need to really just, in future game and whatever they decide to do, they need to work on getting us actual Sonic levels that fit in this open world, and also make this open world something you want to run around and do, because I'm playing it very Ubisoft style, where just checkpoints off a map, unlock all the map, and that's not really what you want. That wasn't like how I played Breath of the Wild. Is the issues, even though I had many issues with Breath of the Wild, I didn't feel like I needed to get everything on the map. I wanted to explore it the way I wanted to explore it. In Sonic Frontiers, it's kind of the opposite. You kind of have to grind out some of this stuff because you need specific coins. It almost feels almost microtransaction. You want to fish, you need a purple coin. You want to talk to Tails or Knuckles or Amy, you need their significant collectible, a heart, a badge, and I forgot what Tails was. You want to play these cyber levels that I know you said that you actually like those a little bit more. Well, you gotta get these gears, which there's not just one way to get the gear. You either kill an enemy, sometimes they're just randomly out there. There's no formula. It's almost almost auto-generated. But it's a good Sonic game. I think it's a good Sonic game. I'm okay with this direction where it's going. I know it's going to leave some people sort of behind that aren't feeling this sort of openness to it. I do think there's a balance they can hit. I don't think they obviously hit it just yet. But I think it's a good direction. It's a solid game. It's fun. I'm loving it. But I think I went in expecting a lot of this stuff and sort of wanting this stuff, where not everybody could really go for it. So that's all I've been playing. These are the same 2 games I'm going to be playing until I beat them. I'm hoping to Platinum Sonic Frontiers just because I do really enjoy the game. There's something nice and relaxing and sort of comforting with that game. I'm also just a bigger Sonic fan than most people, for better or for worse. This is something it's just sort of more of my take, where other games don't really speak to me. So that's all I've been playing. That's all I'm going to be probably playing for a little while. I definitely expect to at least have beaten Sonic Frontiers. So next time we talk, I will have a complete aspect of what the whole game is. What have you been playing? I know that's kind of similar stuff you've been playing.
Yeah, similar stuff, and then a couple other things. I guess I could start with Sonic Frontiers. It's an interesting game, and the thing is, like, first off, I guess I'll start with some of the things I like, because there are things I do like about this game, but I'll get out of the way. Yeah, overall, I don't like the game. It's not that I think it's a bad game. I just find it to be one of the more unpleasant games to play that I probably played in this franchise, probably. And the reason, well, the things that I like is, one thing, I totally admire them trying to go in this direction. I think a lot of older franchises have been trying to pivot into this more open world, modern approach. We've seen it. Lots of franchises tried it. Obviously Zelda, I think, is kind of the most successful one that everybody points to. But in a lot of ways, Mario's tried to do it. Now Sonic's trying to do it. Lots of teams have kind of tried to move into that direction of different levels of success. And so I admire them that I think they've taken kind of a bold approach to it, and a lot of the things they have tried works, and in my opinion, a lot is not working so far. To start with what I like, I do think the music is phenomenal. That's such a big kind of part of the equation for Sonic games for me, and they absolutely nailed it with the soundtrack for this game. Just and mostly like the cyber levels, whether it's remix or original or stuff like that. I just think it's very, very well done. With the cyber stuff, the thing is, I don't necessarily like the way they go about it in terms of introducing it. I don't like that there's so many different currency systems. It's very strange, and it's kind of obtuse in its approach of like where you even get these things. Sometimes they give you these objectives of like, hey, collect this many. It's like Amy memories or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And I kind of just sit there for a second, and I'm looking at the map. I'm like, okay, it's not on the map. And I'm like looking around. I'm kind of moving the camera, and it's like 6 remaining. And I'm like, 6 what? Like, from what though? Oh, so I've gotten some of these? Okay, when? Like, where? Like, where? And it's like, I'm like scratching my head here, and then I run around. I'm looking. I kill a couple enemies. They drop a pink thing. Oh, that's an Amy memory, I guess. There's one. And then I'm kind of just moving around for a while, and you just do that, and it's like, can't do that. You need 2 of the gears. Oh yeah, I have 1 of the gears. Where'd I get it? I don't know. Off the foot of a giant monster. Okay, I guess I'll try to do that again. And it's like, oh, excuse me, you need 10 keys, of course. And I'm like, I don't love that design. That's kind of annoying. But then once we go into the cyber thing, it's more traditional Sonic. But the problem is, I do all of those things, and then I get into this level, and I'm like, okay, this is more familiar. It's a lot more comfortable. The music is banging. It feels good. It's running great. I'm just a sucker for like a very high resolution Sonic experience. A lot of the Sonic games that I play tend to be a lot older, so it's just such an exciting experience when you get that. And then like literally like 90 seconds and it's done. I haven't hit a thing. I haven't gotten hurt. I haven't really done any advanced platforming, and it's done. And then I'm back into this world. And that's the problem for me, where it's like I get these real bite-sized moments of things that I really enjoy. and then I'm kind of thrown back into something that is just naturally a lot slower. And for me personally, I think we've had this discussion actually when it comes to Sonic about what makes Sonic good and then where do they kind of trip up. And specifically one of the trip points I said for the 3D is that you get these moments where Sonic is Sonic in a very traditional way. And then it's the moments in between that I think kind of trip it up because things slow down a lot. And some games I think slow down in a good way, like a Sonic Adventure Battle 2. And then some don't, like in a Sonic 06. And it depends what's kind of in between it that kind of make or break a lot of these 3D Sonic games. And for me, for this one, they try a million different things, which I totally respect that they try their best to kind of like introduce lots of different motivation to traverse this very open world that is maybe not the most geographically interesting world that is out there, but they try to include a lot of different things in it. And as you said, they kind of break up the kind of traditional things you do, the traditional platforming that you encounter in a level. They kind of take that out of the level and they throw it around the world. And they kind of spread it out, and it kind of motivates you to kind of try to explore and stuff like that. Of varying levels of payoff. You know, sometimes you go somewhere and it's like, oh, I can't even do this yet. And then there's other times you do something, it's like, oh, lots of currency up here. That's nice. Or I found this really cool area, part of the map. That's cool. And so from that perspective, I think it's kind of cool. But the thing is, yeah, they don't stick the landing on everything they try. Most of the activities, in my opinion, are not great. Some of them are fun enough. Some of like the little time trial thing where you need to get to a certain area in a certain amount of time. I actually find that kind of fun because they find very creative ways that if like each one has its own kind of gimmick of like how you even get to that area, you could just try to run it out, or you could try to take certain paths and do certain things and blast your way into the sky and find different creative ways to do it. And I think that's actually pretty fun. But a lot of the other things I think are just very, very unpleasant to do. And so from my experience, you know, I didn't make it super far in. I made it maybe 3 to 4 hours in. And I was generally not having a great time with it. I was kind of annoyed with it, but I totally was going to stick it through because I thought they were doing some interesting things with it. I didn't think it was a bad game per se, but it hit me with a moment where I was kind of getting hit back to back with these activities that I just didn't want to do. And some of which seemed that I could just like not do it. Like it wasn't a big deal. And then I bumped into one where I don't know if they brought me to a farm or a field. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but they had like these vegetables in the ground that they wanted me to like dig up. And I was like, okay. And I failed it like once or twice because maybe I just wasn't doing it right. You have to use that little spin circle move to like get them out. And I'm like, okay. And like you need to get like 5,000 points to pass it, and I was like hitting pretty consistent like 4,500. But then I kept like trying the vegetables, and they weren't giving me any points. And I was like, all right, I feel like maybe I'm just doing this right, or maybe I have to combo it a certain way. So I tried it like once, I tried it like twice, and then the third time, and then I really had to take a step back. And at this point, it's the day after it came out, and I'm looking at my UI, and I just see God of War there. I just see God of War next to Sonic Frontiers. And the honest to God truth is I looked at my screen and it's like, what am I doing here? I mean, like, honestly, like, you have me digging up turnips here? Or I could be Kratos? No, absolutely not. So I'm like, I just had to make the executive call. I'm like, you need to get off my system right now. You need to leave. And so I just deleted it off the system. And I was like, that'll be it for me. And so it's all that to say, it's a very simple thing. I think it's a solid game in some ways, but overall I think it's very unpleasant sometimes in between if you don't buy into the initial concept. The initial concept is you're going to get these bite-sized chunks of traditional Sonic spliced in between this kind of slower plodding open world with these disparate puzzles and activities in between it. And then this kind of ambiguous, atmospheric, unclear, slow plotting storyline that you're either going to dig or you're not going to dig. I actually didn't mind that much. That's going to be very hit or miss for people, I think. And that's the selling. That's what it's doing there. It's not like it's trying to do something that it's failing at. It's trying to do something that I think it's succeeding at overall. It's just whether or not you like what it's trying to do or not.
Exactly.
And I just don't like what it's trying to do. But I don't necessarily look at that as an indictment on the game per se. I think this is their foray into the open world market. I think certain people are going to dig it, and I think certain people are not, and I think that's totally fine, because to a certain extent, I actually, in my head, kind of connect this at times to something like a Kirby Forbidden Lands. Now, Kirby was a lot more traditional. They have a lot more traditional Kirby than this has traditional Sonic in it, but they're both forays into something new. And that's not going to resonate with everybody because some people didn't necessarily need it to be reinvented, you know? Like, not everybody was burned out on Sonic and wanted them to go in a bold new direction. But I think overall it's a positive thing for them to do. So, you know, shout out to them. I do think that this overall is going to result in a very, very good direction for Sonic. I just don't think it's going to be realized through this game, probably. I think they're figuring out a lot of things. But the good thing about Sonic Frontiers is a lot of the issues I feel like that plagued previous games are actually not really the things I have the problem with in this game all the time. On a technical front, it's surprisingly stable. It runs quite well. I haven't had any significant performance issues. I'm sure, like, if you tried to play this on like Switch or something like that, it might go differently.
Yeah.
Because there's times that I feel like it's kind of pushing the PS5, and I'm like, bruh, I could only imagine trying to play this on my Switch. But on PS5, it was actually running well. It looked good. The frames weren't cutting out like crazy. The pop-in's insane, but I personally didn't bump into any areas that actually impacted gameplay. It was just more like jarring from like a visual standpoint. I've heard some people talk about the idea that like they were doing something and it popped in last minute and actually affected their ability to like do something. Gameplay wise, I never bumped into that issue, so I won't hold that against them. But yeah, the pop-in is kind of crazy. So that just tells me, yeah, maybe it probably needed a little bit more time, maybe. But at the same time, since the stability's core there, I mean, I wouldn't have held it for too much longer. So I kind of get why they kind of just like threw it out there. So yeah, Sonic Frontiers, not all bad for me, but generally just not for me. Gotham Knights. I played a lot more of that game. I'm like pretty far in. I don't know exactly how much, maybe like 20 hours, something like that. Wow. Overall, I like the game. It's not perfect. It has its issues. Talking about technical issues. Now that's what plagues this one. It has a lot of technical issues. It's very, very repetitive. In a way that it's very like Saints Row 3 in that way. And I kind of mentioned that it's very Saints Row-y that way. Or like Far Cry, where you're kind of doing the same activities over and over and over again. So it's a great game to like kill time, but it's not something that I think you're going to get super invested in, really. It's a great thing to like, you know, play around with some friends, collect some different costumes, grind out some different exercise or some different activities and stuff like that, and you kind of move on with your life. The problem was, I got to a point where I was like, okay, I did so many side activities and I was clearing out the map every single night in the game, that my character was actually pretty over leveled for the story stuff. So I was like, actually, let me just focus on the story for now, beat the story, and then if I still want more of this game, I'll just go back to the side content, because there's tons of case files for different characters like Harley Quinn, Clayface, Mr. Freeze. There's a whole bunch of side stuff you can do. And the problem was it kept freezing and crashing at this exact same spot where I'm climbing a giant building in the story mission. It's critical for you to climb this building and to attack these enemies. And the moment I would punch one of the soldiers, it would crash immediately. And I was like, okay, that's weird. And then I rebooted it and I did all that again. And then getting up to that building takes some time. It takes like upwards of 10 to 15 minutes sometimes to climb that. And I punched the soldier and it crashes. And it did it 3 times. And I'm like, I can't progress. I tried going around the other side of the building, punching a different enemy. It crashed. And it got to a point where it's like, I literally can't play this game anymore. So right now I'm kind of waiting for a fix. I looked up online, 1 or 2 people that I saw encounter that issue with a different mission, I think, or the same mission, different part. Nobody exactly seemed to have the same exact issue I had. But yeah, I couldn't progress anymore. And it was a thing where like other games were coming out. I was trying to finish this one before a lot of other things came out. And so I kind of I'm like right there at the end. It's pretty far in the game. I think it's like in the last chunk of the game. It's not the last mission, but it's like the last chunk. So that's kind of a shame that it kind of went out like that. I think overall, Gotham Knights, even though I had a good time with it, I do think it's like a botched experience and a botched landing for WB, which is not surprising necessarily. But it's a real shame that this is even tangentially lightly connected to the Arkham games. It's technically not, I understand that, but like obviously everybody's making that connection. The characters look very similar and stuff like that. And with the combat, they're obviously trying to evoke that spirit. But man, it's so obvious that whatever Rocksteady can do, they just don't got it. Like they just don't. And it's a real shame because I really wanted to like this game, especially because, you know, anybody who's a big Batman fan has wanted to see the Gotham family kind of brought in more and the Gotham Knights brought in more. I've wanted to play as, you know, Batgirl. I wish there was like other characters like Orphan and Spoiler in there. That would have been cool too. But being able to play as a Nightwing, Red Hood, actually having Tim Drake's Robin in a game, I think all that is really awesome. It's just, yeah, they didn't really stick the landing. I feel like there's just not enough here. I felt like what they did was they kind of made something that's maybe 2 hours worth of content and then copy pasted, reskin the other versions of it. There you go, a full game. And it's just like, there's just not enough really meat on the bone there to really justify its own game. You know what I mean? There's definitely good things about it, especially the stealth sections where you're kind of creeping around and taking out, cops or different types of enemies. I think there's actually some cool moments, but they're so far few in between that it's a real shame with Gotham Knights. To kind of continue and speed up a little bit, I also played and beat Bayonetta 3.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I blazed through that game. I probably got through that game in like 3 to 4 sessions. It's not a long game. It takes about... If you really, really mainline it, you could probably beat it in about 10 hours, but realistically, most people's experience is probably going to be between 15 and 20. And overall, I loved it. I thought it was very, very good. Bayonetta delivers on exactly what they needed to for Bayonetta. If you've played the first two and you just kind of wanted more of that and maybe bigger, that's this game basically. They're not reinventing the wheel. There's not that much... gameplay difference. They introduce a couple of new systems, some of which work, some don't, but overall the story's awesome. It's so over the top, it's crazy. It's like a weird direction for them to go narratively at times, where they're like, it's legitimately at times a kaiju game, like a kaiju simulator where like you're monster versus monster. There's tons of moments like that. It's literally like a Ultraman meets Godzilla game at times, which is crazy. It's so over the top and ridiculous, but I think it's such an amazing cap for this trilogy that they've been working on. And not to get into spoilers or anything like that, but it's cool because they leave it open enough to continue if they wanted to. But yeah, they do some really cool things to kind of bring it all together and pay homage to those who have kind of come on the ride with them. I would say that it's probably... The story is so ridiculous and hard to follow at times, and not in a like heavy lore Kingdom Hearts way, and more so like nonsense, what are we even talking about here type of way that is like fun. That I think, to be honest with you, if you don't care too much about story and understanding every single reference, you could probably jump into this game and have a good time with it, not having played the first two. But overall, I would say if you got the patience for it, play the first two, because there's some great payoff moments towards the end that make it all worth it. I think one of the biggest things going against this game is just the hardware limitations. This game pushes the Switch. And overall, I think it performs quite well. Platinum's never showed an inability to make things run on Switch, so shout out to them for that. But yeah, man, at times it's definitely like on its last legs where it's like, I don't think they could do another one of these on Switch, to be honest. Whatever Bayonetta 4, if they choose to do this, looks like, it's probably going to have to be on whatever the successor hardware to Switch is, because unless they do nothing any bolder on a technical level, it's going to have trouble running. I think it's pretty unstable in terms of its ability to keep a consistent frame rate, but I think it's not plunging to single digits or like anything so crazy that it feels kind of jarring in that way. But you can tell it's kind of like struggling a little bit at times, and it chugs along sometimes. But generally speaking, it moves. It's doing its thing. It runs. It looks quite good. I played it both handheld and docked to see how it looked. On the OLED, looks really, really good. Makes the colors pop at times. Which this one is a very colorful game for anybody who's played Bayonetta. You know that. So yeah, I definitely recommend it, especially to any Bayonetta fans. And actually, I think even to semi-casual DMC fans, I think would also get a kick out of this one. They introduce a new character very early on, not a spoiler, named Violetta, who wields a katana, who gives a very, imagine kind of an unrefined Virgil at times, that kind of vibe, that I think is actually a cool style to add, because if you played Bayonetta before, you know she's doing backflips all over the place. It's very shooty, it's very fly, she's all in the sky. And this Viola, that's her name, Viola plays very different than her. She's a little bit more restrained. She has a different kind of summon that works a little different. So I think if you even casually like DMC, you might actually get a kick out of this game, because I feel a lot of the spirit of DMC 5 in this game. None of the seriousness. It is, now everybody calm down. It is not as good as DMC 5. I'm not saying that. Because DMC 5 is, in my view, almost borderline a masterpiece. This one is very, very good, but it's not that good. But I can tell some of that spirit is in this one, where it works in a lot of the character transformations in relation to their ability to fight, that I think DMC5 did very well, that is introduced in this one, that I think is really, really fun. Some of the actual visual transformations look very like, the demon mode transformations that Dante and Virgil make.
Yep.
They do something very similar in this one, and the payoff is pretty much just as satisfying when you're fighting in those modes. So yeah, Bayonetta 3, big recommendation. And then I'll just finish off really quick. I've also obviously been playing God of War. It sounds like we're about probably the same time in. I'm about like three and a half right now hours in. So not that far at all. I'm kind of savoring this because I'm really, really liking this game. And I don't have a ton else to play right now, so I'm kind of like not trying to rush through it. But yeah, man, they stick the landing on this one. This one's great. I think it's outstanding. Which I mean, I think everybody could have expected that. But at the same time, of course, I was a little nervous because God of War 1 is so good. So I'm like, are they going to be able to keep this? I know the director is different. I don't know if they can keep up with this. They're going in both directions. I know they pivoted from the wanting to originally make a trilogy to 2 games. Like, is that going to work? And overall, I would say they're doing an outstanding job. It kicks off very intensely. What a great intro. And absolutely. The game, like it just came out of the gate swinging, which I really appreciated, because they basically answer any doubts that you might have in the first like hour of like, hey, yeah, we're not playing around with this time. And then it actually slows down the deeper you go in, and then kind of ramps up at the key moments. As far as I've been in, and yeah, one of the great things I love about this game is that I'm actually find myself doing side content a lot more than I found myself doing that in the first game, which I really appreciate. That they've worked in like some cool interweaving narratives that kind of contextualize some of the characters you're with. And so I found myself actually killing probably an hour of that, not even doing main story stuff, and kind of just doing this side thing that I won't get into because it's early spoiler stuff, but it is tied to the narrative, so I won't get into that. But yeah, I found myself doing that, and it was actually really fun, and you got some really cool armor because of it, and you found out some interesting stuff about some of the characters that you're traveling with. And so yeah, no, I think it's really, really great game. It looks beautiful, it runs amazing, and I think it's a great reminder of like, after playing like Bayonetta's great, but it doesn't run the best because it's on Switch. Sonic Frontiers is Sonic Frontiers, and then Gotham Knights. Going from those games to like God of War, that it kind of reminds you like what the PlayStation first party is. You know what I mean? Like this is they're kind of in a league of their own right now. Because I've been playing a bunch of stuff on Game Pass too, light things, and it's like, yeah, they quickly remind you that like the Santa Monica, Naughty Dog, Insomniac, the Sucker Punch, these guys, they're not playing around. Like, they're on a different level. Not to crap on those other games. I like those games, but these guys are like doing something really special here. And it also is the added benefit of seeing what first party can actually do with new hardware. because I play PS5 games all the time. But there's just when you play, whether it's a Last of Us remake, Last of Us 2 ported on there, Ghost of Tsushima ported on there, or in the God of War now. It's just really impressive what the first party's able, the amount of power and visuals. Horizon, for example, the visuals and power that they're able to extract from this hardware is just super impressive and makes me very excited to see what does it look like 4 years, 5 years into this life cycle. So yeah, big thumbs up from me. I'm excited to play more of this and give you guys more thoughts as I kind of get deeper. But yeah, that's all I can say for now.
No, yeah, I agree too. It's one of those games I can't wait to play. Like, I can't wait to get through it.
Yeah, and I think one of the most awesome things is they kind of laid the framework in 2018's version, and then they're doing such a great job characterizing these characters, really making you like care about Atreus in a way that it's like, okay, so, and obviously they set up some major stuff at the end of 1, but like you can see him maturing and becoming his own man, which I really appreciate. You can see Kratos, if you pay close enough attention, really trying. And, they obviously have that dynamic of a father-son, and how do you kind of take this beast of a man that kind of just existed at one point to solely take life into pivoting on how to raise life is a very hard thing for him, obviously. And you can see him wrestling with those things, where he's obviously wrestling with the trauma of losing his wife and how to be a better father and how to wrestle with his past while simultaneously raising his son to be strong, but also not be the man that he was raised to be. And I think all of those dynamics are just really, really impressively well written, and so I just want to give a shout out to them that they're really nailing it, and it's only getting better as I go deeper. So I could only imagine we're probably gonna have to do a spoiler cast on this one. It's been a while since we've done one of those, but I think we're gonna have to do a God of War spoiler cast for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, so that's what we've been playing. Good time of the year right now. Finally, things have kind of kicked in. So we can get into our first story. Kojima Studios refuses a buyout. This is by George Yang over there at IGN. So Hideo Kojima has been approached with some ridiculous monetary offers from other companies to buy his studio. No surprise there. Kojima Productions, however, he's been rejecting all of them. On episode 10 of his Spotify podcast, Brain Structure, Kojima says, I don't know why I said Brian. Brain Structure. Kojima says, "We are indies. We have no affiliations whatsoever and not backed by anyone. We are on good terms with everybody in the industry." He continues, "Every day I'm approached by offers from all over the world to buy our studios. Some of those offers are ridiculously high prices, but it's not that I want money. I want to make what I want to make. That's why I created the studio. So long as I'm alive, I don't think I'll ever accept those offers." And I don't know about you, but that was some of the best news I had heard all week. We all knew that Kojima Studios was obviously highly sought after by, you would imagine, Sony, obviously, definitely Microsoft. They're working together right now. You could only imagine all these different teams and studios that want Kojima's studios underneath them, probably for exclusivity. And I'm so glad that he's keeping to that, indie vision of his, to have that freedom and flexibility, because the reality is Kojima is so established that he doesn't really need to sign to anybody, because he can get the money and remain autonomous at the same time. So while he's in that unique position, why not just take advantage of that and have that flexibility there, so he can present his vision to other people? They could either finance it or not, and then he can execute his vision exactly how he wants to. And I think that's such a awesome position for him to be in, and that ensures that we can continue to get unapologetically Kojima games without worrying about them kind of being watered down or filtered through the wants of some other corporate entity. What did you feel about this story?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's some of the best news. I think, again, like you said, it's obvious that we know Sony, and we definitely know Microsoft was definitely probably sending offers over there. Not including, who knows what, Tencent and Embracer.
Who knows, they put out an offer.
Absolutely. So it's good to know, right? 'Cause there was a lot of rumors. There was one time I think Sony had put Kojima in like an artwork with all the first party studios, so everybody thought that was coming. And he's come out multiple times to say, "I'm gonna stay independent, and I see it for the foreseeable future," and everything like that. So it's good to hear that, because he is, and it just also makes sense that he doesn't go exclusive to anyone. Of course, I would always love everyone to be able to play everything they want on anything they want. But Kojima is just someone that, you know, you can't, especially, again, we still don't ever know to this day what really went on with Konami.
Yeah.
But obviously he's not in a rush to get in a similar situation again. And as much as I wouldn't, you don't want that, because you gotta be able to be free to make the stuff you make. Not every company's gonna let you make a walking simulator. The way Death Stranding is. That's not something that every company's gonna greenlit. So it's good, because Kojima is someone who's all over the place. You know, he is making some weird cloud game / experience with Microsoft, which doesn't really translate to PlayStation, because I don't know if it's exclusive, but it doesn't really work with the way PlayStation is set up, but it does work with the way Xbox is set up with cloud and Game Pass and everything like that. So it's exciting. And it's exciting to see that, because in a world where every other month felt like someone was being purchased, and then immediately things were getting cut down, it is nice to see that he's sticking by his gun, and he's going to make what he wants to make. It's not like he's going to be stuck doing what everyone wants. You know, he made way too many Metal Gears past what he wanted to make, and then the one time he wanted to dabble in the Silent Hills, we all obviously know what happened there. So it's good that nothing's going to just be ripped out of his hands for no reason. And if he is this sought after, if someone doesn't want one of his ideas, he has a million other places he can go, and he's not stuck to it. So it's just good news in very aspects. And I wish we heard a little bit more about this from other companies, because we know obviously these guys, Microsoft, Sony, Embracer, Tencent, Saudi Arabia, who bought out SNK.
Oh yeah.
You know, we know they're all walking around with their checkbooks. So it's glad that people are standing the way they haven't been in a long time. Everything's first party, or very little second party.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about the story is, like, I heard it and I was like very happy, but I actually was surprised, to be honest with you, because I totally thought that Kojima Productions was going to get bought out. I know his intention was to remain indie once upon a time, but the closeness and the proximity to the Sony first party, I mean, Sony was effectively treating them like a first party studio. In the way Death Stranding, which, you know, Death Stranding got the exact same marketing level as like Ghost of Tsushima and Last of Us and stuff like that. So I just assumed, I was like, yeah, they'll probably get absorbed at some point. He'll keep some of his autonomy for a while, but I think, you know, like he's eventually gonna be, you know, kind of out there. But no, it looks like they're gonna remain autonomous, which is great, because that means, you know, theoretically, and the way he's talking is like, you know, that he's got like no formal affiliations anywhere, but he's not backed by anybody, but he's on good terms with everybody. That's exciting. That's a great thing, because then that means, yeah, like maybe he'll go work with Nintendo and do some weird stuff with them. You know, they always seem down to try out like a new weird IP or something like that. So yeah, I think this is overall very good news. I like that he's gonna bounce around. I think it's gonna be probably a little frustrating for some, because, you know, obviously not everybody is platform agnostic, so there's going to be people who are like really big Metal Gear fans, who are really big like Death Stranding fans, who may not be able to play his next game. I don't know if it's going to be on all platforms, and obviously he's working with Microsoft pretty closely on that, so you know, it's possible they won't be able to play this game, and then if they jump and he wants to work with Nintendo and they put something on the Switch or something like that, they might not be able to play that game. That, I think, from that perspective, that's going to probably annoy some people, because unlike most developers, Kojima has like fans of him outside of like the video game. So unlike, like, for example, like Miyamoto, you find Miyamoto, let's say the unimaginable happens, and like Miyamoto makes a game on PlayStation, let's say, that will motivate a lot of people to like go and seek out that game, because just on the name of the guy alone. Kojima's got one of those things where people follow him, whatever he's attached to, whether it's the Silent Hills PT thing, whether it's, you know, his Amazon delivery simulator game with the ghosts, or whether it's Metal Gear. And so I think that's going to be probably frustrating to some, where it's like he's bouncing all over the place. But I think there's a beauty in that. As you were saying, with all the acquisitions, with all these companies getting swallowed up by even bigger companies and consolidating here and there, I think it's awesome to someone who's like, nah, that's cool. Like, I'll have my things financed, but yeah, I don't really need it to be bought out, because again, you got to keep in mind, like, this guy, as you were saying, like, he went through the ringer with Konami, whatever that was. He's accomplished right now. I don't think he's really like, he doesn't need to prove himself anymore. and I'm sure he's doing very well for himself. So I don't know if he needs the embracer bag like that, like some people do, where like some places, if they don't get their stuff immediately financed by whatever company is above them, their owners or whatever like that, it's not going to happen. Where Kojima, I feel like he wants to keep that flexibility to shop around. To it's like, oh, you won't do it? Well, Microsoft will. And the good thing is he can kind of weaponize the wars, the console wars, to his benefit, where it's like, Sony is almost motivated, or Microsoft's almost motivated to work with Kojima when he goes to them, because then you're basically just giving the game to the competition. So he can have his pick, basically. He's like, oh, if Microsoft won't give it to me, Sony will. And if Sony won't, then Nintendo will, or whatever, or EA will, or whatever. And that's a great position for him to be in, where it's just like someone is, and probably more than one person, is going to want to make that game for him, whatever it looks like, because he's proven, no matter how weird and abstract his concept sounds on paper, that you like, that won't work. That's not going to be a thing. I mean, technically, historically, it has. I mean, he moved 10 plus million units of Death Stranding, which is one of the weirder first-party games I've ever played in my life. And that's a really impressive thing. You talk about, on paper, a guy who delivers packages in increasingly large backpacks, and you try not to fall over while simultaneously invisible ghosts try to kill you.
Yeah. Like,
somebody comes to your accomplished game publisher and it's like, hey, can you finance my game? What do you say? And it's not Kojima. So they took a risk and it paid off. So I think he's in an excellent position where he can kind of take his pick, whatever mixes with the tech that he's looking for. So obviously he's got the cloud thing right now, so I think it makes a lot of sense for them to go to Xbox with their kind of xCloud embedded capabilities. It's an existing ecosystem. It has the player base. It has the tech. They're in some ways industry leaders there. And so, I think this is like a great option for him, and I'm very happy to hear that.
No, it's really exciting, and it just lets us explore his mind, because he's a very unique man.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't feel like I stand him as much as other people do, but he is very unique. I mean, this is the guy who put a version of a solar panel inside of a GBA device.
Yeah, Game Boy. Yeah.
So it's nuts. And it's good, because that means he's not going anywhere, and he'll always be him, and his company will be him. So it's exciting. Which it brings us into the next topic, actually, so we can go in there. His new game may have leaked. As reported by VGC, it now appears that footage of Kojima's Overdose has begun to leak online. The footage shows Margaret Qualley's character, which she was in Death Stranding, exploring dark corridors with a flashlight. It then ends with a jump scare before the words "Game Over" and a weird text, and a Hideo Kojima game and Overdose show up on the screen. It is obviously unclear if this is legit or not, especially that main footage. If you don't want to see a shirtless guy recording off his laptop.
Yeah.
And only time will tell the truth. Overdose was first rumored this past June when Tom Henderson of Insider Gaming posted details about the game. The leak apparently came from footage showing third-person gameplay of Qualley's character exploring dark corridors using a flashlight. Kojima Productions reported request to have the article removed was denied, which really just closes more and more in. Again, they would have been better off saying, like I said before when we talked about this leak, it would have been better if they said nothing, because you contacting them to take it down and copyright striking it only shows that it's true. This footage is I'm more mixed on because it does look very early on, but to have Margaret Qualley's character model look so much like her and so much like her counterpart in Death Stranding makes me believe that this is at least something to be. I checked the footage out. I had heard it when it was spreading around. I didn't really look at it then. But I was more curious to see, because you can slap a Kojima Productions on anything and have people believe it. So I checked the footage out, and it does look very, again, it's such a small sliver. I think it's like a minute long of her character walking around. There's a jump scare, and then it's over. Don't know if it could be some sort of, was the original pitch or whatever it is. But it is just, it does call to me that it's weird because we are in the part where we have so many horror games coming out. Again, we have Dead Space coming back. We have Callisto Protocol fighting against Dead Space. Resident Evil is at its biggest. So I'm more curious. Not that I want more horror games. I'm more curious to see what his take on horror. This is the guy who's just in bed with, not just in bed, but has so many connections. Guillermo del Toro. He's got connections to Norman Reedus and all these people who have different tastes and flair and ideas that they can, he's more than happy to pick from and put together to experience a new type of horror. So it's exciting. I do kind of hope and kind of see, he's been teasing for a while now, a game. I don't know if he's teasing some of the artwork that he's been teasing with like Ellie Fanning and stuff sort of fit in with the way Game Over spelled out with like these weird symbols. Sort of all starts to jive. I am hoping that the Game Awards this year, we do get some sort of teaser or confirmation of what his next project is that he's working on, because it does seem like it's starting to get the Gotham Knights treatment, where it's like they were teasing Court of Owls for like 3 years before we got any sort of announcement. And obviously we know there's something was going on with that. Kojima does like to do this sort of tease and play, and I would like to just see what we can kind of hope to get from him. So it's exciting. What did you think of this?
Yeah, this is an interesting one, because definitely when I first saw that video, I was definitely inclined to not think it's legit. Mostly because just they fake mini vertical slices on found footage looking like somebody's recording a TV. Like, there's like a million of those of GTA 6 and all types of Red Dead 3 and all kind of BS on YouTube. So those things kind of pop up. So like, because it was so little and it's a character that we've seen kind of before, I was like, I felt like somebody could maybe mock this up in Unreal Engine, render it on their PC, and then record it on their phone and say it's a Hideo Kojima game, and it's like, okay. But yeah, it's a lot of the time these companies' actions after the fact that kind of out it as being legit. When the cease and desist come, when the copyright strikes happen, when they request to take the article down, if it was like BS rumors, because there's lots of BS that have gone around related to Kojima and games he's put out, and they don't say a thing about it because it's nonsense. And if I were to theoretically like put together a video of some, the vertical slice that I make with none of their existing stuff, let's say, but just like my own vertical slice, and say this is Kojima's next game and put it on YouTube, I don't think they do anything because it's not real. But when they move quickly to kind of get things taken down, not only maybe get the video taken down, but they actually moved to get the article removed, that probably tells me, okay, that this is probably an early build of something. Because it's so little, this seems like a quick concept pitch or something like that. This doesn't seem like something beyond that, or maybe like a quick thing, a teaser trailer to stick on like at the Game Awards or something like that. Again, we're less than a month away for Game Awards, so I wouldn't have been surprised if this was something maybe that they were going to show very lightly at the Game Awards or something like that. But it is exciting to see that he's working on something now. I'm totally down to see his vision of horror, because there's always he's had horror elements in most of his games in kind of the modern era. Even Metal Gear at times had very unsettling kind of visuals. Obviously, Death Stranding in some ways is kind of survival horror, as much as it is like simulation and sci-fi and whatever. And so I think this is a natural fit for him. I don't play a ton of horror games, so I'm kind of curious to see what his spin on that is, and if that is something that resonates with me. I have no doubt that it's going to be a very strange take on horror. I don't think it's going to be your traditional Silent Hill walking with a flashlight through fog type of game. I think it's going to be something a lot different than that. And so I'm kind of excited to see what his take is on that, because he has such a creative way of approaching kind of traditional things where, like, for example, military games existed for the longest time. Stealth military games existed. Metal Gear existed. And then he got his hands on it, and look what he did with it. It went in a direction I would have never imagined that a military, stealth game could ever have gone in. There was just weird themes and storylines and branching narratives and character types and genres playing around with the music, the everything. And so I'm totally down to see what his take on horror is, because I feel like in some ways where he goes, he kind of invents genres, or like at least subgenres. And so I'm excited to see what subgenre he's able to invent of horror. And it's cool that something exists, but it's so early on that it's not like we can like take much from this, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially with just how weird it looks. Because again, the video that I'm sure most people have seen is a guy recording off like a tablet.
Yeah.
And in that video, it looks like he's watching some streamer play or something. In that video, it looks like the lady or whoever's in that corner is playing off a mobile device. It looks like she's on she's controlling with a phone.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes sense to like the whole cloud gaming thing. And that wouldn't be the first time. There was a game. It was on PS Plus like about 2 years ago, where you can download an app to control it. It's a very quantum dream type game. I don't remember what the game was called. It's like a one name girl or Emily or something like that, and you can download an app to control it if you didn't want to control it with your DualShock 4. So it's very familiar to that. So it's not the strangest thing I've seen, but again, I just wonder, because it does look like she has her phone in her hand and she's looking up at something. But again, then you're hit with this shirtless dude, and when the screen goes black. So I quickly clicked off the video because there was not much more to see. So it's just interesting to see how much of this exists or doesn't exist in our time here.
Yeah, and at least we know pretty concretely that this game is Kojima and not Hassan Karaman or whatever his name was. I don't know where their game is. But at least we have two separate projects now, so there's not that overlap. And I guess we can move on to our last story. This is going to be an interesting one. So there's been a lot of rumors kind of circulating around about a potential price hike. This wouldn't be necessarily unfounded because we've seen price hikes from Sony in non-US regions. So as part of Nintendo's fiscal year 2023 6 months earning release, the company addressed a potential price hike for its console. As reported by Bloomberg's Takashi Michizuki, Nintendo still isn't implementing a price hike immediately, but is carefully considering if it needs to take the option. Currently, the standard Switch retails for $299.99, so $300. The handheld-only Switch Lite for $199.99, and the premium Switch OLED model for $349.99. So my question to you, Steve, is if there was a price increase that Nintendo did, what do you think the limit for each SKU should be where it no longer becomes a good price offering? Would you support a price increase? Like, I'm curious about your thoughts about this.
Yeah, you have to take in what's going on in the world today. You have other companies, Oculus went and price hiked, a device that was out in the market for almost 3-4 years, with the Oculus 2 or Rift 2, whatever. That's been out for years, and Facebook or Meta, whatever, upped their price by like $100. PlayStation and other countries had to take a price, to raise their pricing on device. Microsoft's talked about how they're not going to do it just yet, or at least now, but they came out with the weird verbiage of pretty much like we can't say we won't do it, but right now no. So it makes sense that it's gonna happen. If it were to happen, you have to look in the day and age that with what we're going into a recession, and we're going into, you have just inflation going on to a crazy standard. So it makes sense that you're gonna see this. I think if they go model by model, and if they're not gonna do it just a generic price hike, I think maybe they try to keep maybe this is my guess what they would try to do. Maybe keep the Switch Lite at that price. You can't really cut corners there any more than they have. No dock and everything like that. So if they want to keep systems selling, maybe try to keep that Switch Lite just about there. Then you have the retails. You have the original Switch, which is actually the second model Switch, for $300, and then you have the OLED for $350. I can't see them almost justifying about a $50 price on each one. So making the original model or whatever, the standard model, up around $350. The OLED model, which is their more sort of deluxe model, for $400, which is still pretty steep. And then the Switch Lite at $250 would make sense. Obviously, they would probably go the route that other companies are going to go and try to give you a free game or free year of Nintendo Online, or they're gonna try to sort of soften that blow by making it a sweeter deal. But that's more of my hope. I just don't really know in Nintendo's case. This is the same company that the Switch has been out since 2017. Every year for the Christmas bundle, it's been the same Christmas bundle. I worked 2 Christmases at GameStop. It's always the same Mario Kart bundle. So that they try to amp that it's a new bundle. So it's like you never know. That's what I would almost understand. Obviously, I have a Switch. I don't have any purpose right now to buy another Switch, so I wouldn't be hurt by this. I just think that if Nintendo does it for sure, then you have to think that all the other consoles will do it. I know most of these companies, I know Microsoft and Sony talks about how they're selling the consoles basically at a loss, if not breaking even. So that's where I kind of feel where it's like, it's almost, I feel like it's it's gonna happen. They can't avoid it for much longer. But that's where I would see. I don't see how else you could justify going above another $50 price hike on technically some hardware that's a couple years old already.
Yeah. For me, I'm kind of reading this story. I'm glad they're not planning an immediate hike, because generally speaking, I would say I'm not necessarily against price hikes. I don't like in-flight price hikes, and what I mean by that is once the console is out, has been out for a while, and then you increase the price while it's in flight out there in the middle of the life cycle. I don't really like that, unless you're going down. But I don't like the in-flight, because right now basically what they're saying is due to like inflation and stuff like that, which is market conditions. They need to adjust the prices. That basically to me shifts the burden of the market conditions onto the consumer, which I'm just not into. Now, I understand they're probably already operating on razor thin margins, if they have margins on any of these hardware sales anyways, thus the whole, like operating at a loss thing. But for me, it's sometimes I kind of just feel like, as a general concept, it's kind of on the company to manage market fluctuations however they need to, without necessarily just shifting the burden onto us, because very specifically a lot of these consoles are already on the high end, to be honest with you. I understand like they're already on the high end and it still doesn't work out for them the best in terms of margins, but that is kind of ultimately their problem. You know what I mean? Like, to me, Nintendo's an interesting position because their console is a hybrid console. So they occupy that weird middle zone between handheld and full price, where they can't go full handheld price because, again, this can be a proper console. It's docked. It has a lot more moving parts that cost a lot more money. So they can't hit those, not necessarily that 150, 200 range with their highest unit that they were able to do with the 3DS, for example, or the Game Boy Advances and DSs and stuff like that. But they also can't go all the way to like Series X PS5 mode where they're hidden at 450. They can't do that. Not with the Switch, especially because not only is this a hybrid console, but it's also an older hybrid console at this point. It came out in 2017, so we're 5 years in now. Going up in price, especially if they're gonna crack 400 for 5-year-old hardware, for nothing better, it's a hard sell for me at this point. I feel like they have to keep the Switch Lite at 200. They need that low barrier to entry, and the Switch Lite effectively is a handheld device. You got to keep it in that handheld range. So I think keeping it at 200 is perfect for them. They have to keep that down. Standard Switch retail is a tough sell to go to 350 because, again, at this point it's an outdated model. There is a better hardware SKU. This is the exact hardware that was out 5 years ago, and the idea that this is somehow increased, it has this increase in value, I think kind of on a general games wide, it's actually decreased in value of what the Switch offering, what it can really do 5 years later is actually less now because, obviously technology has progressed so far. So I think they're in a rough position where like increasing it anymore is rough because the OLED, I love my OLED. Don't get it twisted. I love it. I think it's a beautiful piece of hardware. 400 steep, man. You're in PS5 territory now with the digital only. So, a digital only PS5 and the Switch OLED being the exact same price, I think that's an issue, personally. You got one that is a 4K 60 device, and then one that is a 1080 docked 720 handheld 30 frames per second system. It's like for the same price, one's 2 years old, like going on 2 years old, and the other one's 5 years old for the same price. That's an issue, even though the OLED model is a lot newer. I think they're in a rough point right now, which if I was them, I feel like you eat what you got to eat this time, because they're already so deep into the life cycle. Increasing it now is kind of ridiculous, but I hope they're around the corner from launching maybe new hardware that maybe they'll just have to come out of the gate a little bit more expensive that time. I think, I think people already pay a lot for their games, in many cases too much. But if they have to come out of the gate a little bit higher to protect the margins, I mean, so be it. I'd much rather than that than kind of try to increase things in flight, because in-flight increases just are kind of annoying and not great consumer practice. In my view, just in my opinion, to kind of be like, okay, this is the price for this thing, and then a couple years later be like, actually, sorry, no, that same thing is worth this now. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of, it's just not a great sell. So yeah, I think they're kind of unfortunately stuck, because I feel like they're already at the max point of what I feel like most consumers probably feel comfortable paying for this hardware. If they come out of the gate with a new Switch that is like much more powerful, and they want to hit the 450 at that point, so be it. I think most people, there'll be some people who are like, that's expensive, but I think most people would eat that. I think you start to lose people when you're telling parents like, oh, you bought your one kid that, and now they want the same thing, for the holiday season, except it's way more expensive now. Like, unfortunately, it's too late in the cycle to do that. PlayStation's in a position right now where they're kind of doing the same thing. They've actually already increased prices, just not in the United States. And it, for me, I feel like was stomached a little bit more because they're so early in the life cycle. I don't know most, but like a lot of people who want PS5s don't even have PS5s yet. So it's not like they're in flight, but they're also still very much transitioning, as opposed to Switch, where there's so many out there. So you're kind of, if you increase it, you're punishing the people who are like late adoptees. Where like PlayStation, I mean, if they increase a little bit outside the US, a lot of people don't even have the hardware yet, and they're so early into it. So it's not like the whole like $70 game, $400 to $500 console thing isn't really locked in quite yet, because it hasn't cemented, because it hasn't been around as much, and you can barely count the first year because most people didn't have PS5s in the first year. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I feel about it.
No, it makes a lot of sense. It's just they do have to watch out in that price point, like you said. I know there's been rumors constantly about the Switch Pro. I mean, that's an ongoing joke we've been doing for 2 years. Actually, I think the life of we've been doing this show, Switch Pro's always been rumored. And that's the only time I think, and even then, when I start looking, say they break that 400, 450-ish range, you got to remember, you got Steam Deck. I think their lowest system is $400.
Oh, yeah, that's a great point, Steam Deck.
And Valve is such a big company that they can kind of take the hit and not move their pricing, or at least of their cheaper model. So and the possibilities are endless there, especially when you start looking, a $400 Switch, say, on a good day. Even then, you got games that are always going to be $60, right? Nintendo games are always $60, and then you get a Steam sale where you can get a whole franchise
for like 20
for dollars. Like I always said, I got Resident Evil 0 through 7, including remake of 2 and 3. For $25-$30.
That's so nuts.
I didn't want to play half the games, but I wanted that collection. That's such a good deal. I got the whole Fear franchise. I think I got that for like $4. So when you start looking at this, that's when you can start playing some of the, and I know we look deeper than most of these people. Most parents are going to walk into their Best Buy, their Walmart, their GameStop, and get sold on one of these devices, where someone can be like, listen, you can't walk into GameStop and get a Steam Deck or see a Steam Deck and have someone there I'm not in every GameStop to tell people, no, listen, if you're gonna spend $400, look what you can do with this. You can get Wii running on here, and because they're not gonna do the legwork, but
yeah,
it is the territory that some people are gonna see.
Yeah, you raise a really good point. Yeah, if they go up to, let's say they take the OLED model to 400, now you're in a position with barring the screen being OLED versus an LED screen on the Steam Deck, you're basically at the exact same price point of another handheld device that also has docking capabilities technically. That has objectively, I'm not speaking about the games, I'm not speaking about the Nintendo charm, I'm talking about just the hardware itself, is objectively worlds beyond yours. That's a problem. You know what I mean? That now you're back into the Wii U position, kind of, where you have this, home console foray that is just dramatically weaker than the competition. And so there's very little outside of being a Nintendo first-party game fan to even get your hardware, because everything runs objectively worse. And it's not dramatically cheaper. And so that's the problem right now, where they have to keep that disparity where it's like, okay, yes, we're not the most powerful. We do have great games over here, and we're a little bit cheaper too. You're not like killing the bank, because the PS5 and the Series X, they are expensive. I acknowledge that for sure. They're very expensive devices. And so I think they need to play a gentle game where they don't only understand the lane they occupy in terms of like the type of games they play out, but also the price point that they occupy. Specifically, especially with the handheld thing. Now that Steam Deck is kind of nipping on their toes, and obviously the people saying like the Steam Deck is like the Switch killer. That's ridiculous. But But I think they need to play a careful game where they don't get too close to competing too directly with the Steam Deck. Because it's going to put them in an unnecessarily tight situation in terms of the optics and marketing of their console. But again, thankfully, they are 5 years in, which means that chances are whatever they're doing next is probably going to arrive within the next 2 years. And I feel like a lot of these problems, they don't necessarily go away, but the pipeline's probably going to be a little bit better. The production pipeline is going to be a little bit better in 2 years, hopefully, for them by that point. And they can also increase prices at that point, because they wouldn't even be increasing prices, they'd be introducing higher prices. So they might be able to come out of the gate with a $450 device that maybe does 4K upscale docked or something like that. That I think makes a lot more sense to go into that price point, as opposed to 5-year-old hardware that is barely keeping up and potentially going into that price range.
No, absolutely, I agree.
All right, so that's all the stories we had this week. Hope you guys enjoyed. We're coming up into basically, I think, the lull, but the end of the year, where we're going to start to be able to have some of our Game of the Year conversations that I'm really quite excited for. It was quite a crazy year. I think certain studios certainly showed up this year, and then certain ones are nowhere to be seen. Cough, cough, Xbox. So I'm excited to have those conversations with you, and we'll be back with another episode very soon, guys. So this was the NeoVintage podcast. I'm Jabro, and I'm here with
Steve. Take care, guys.
And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.